After a heated competition, Fairchild Republic has produced the ultimate piece of machinery to perform the role of close air support. But the Air Force was reluctant to go into production until they have seen for themselves that the aircraft can fulfill its very specific combat role. In a series of amazing tests, the A-10 and its remarkable gun are put through their paces in an effort to create a full-on Cold War battle scenario.
We had secretly assembled what we proudly boasted at the time was like the third or fourth largest tank army in the world. Over 300 Soviet tanks from all over the world, off junk heaps and whatever, out in the desert outside Las Vegas. So we ran a program with A-10s, with a gun installed, and with the current ammunition as it was going into production.
She had a very strange sound to those engines, very characteristic, and to this day, every time I hear it, I look up, because I know it's my bird. We knew what she'd do, and she didn't disappoint us.
And we did a meticulous series of tests, attack after attack, checking tactics, checking burst lengths, all these details to see how effective we were against tanks. We learned an enormous amount about it. The most important thing we learned was that this weapon had unprecedented effectiveness.
During the Cold War, the threat of Soviet tanks advancing on Western Europe was at times a very real possibility. The Air Force finally gives the production of the A-10 the go-ahead. It was now ready to face a specific enemy. With its highly accurate weapons delivery platform, it was the ideal machine to defend against Soviet armored supremacy. The first A-10 arrived at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona in October 1975. Immediately christened the Warthog, the A-10 was admired for its simplicity and ruggedness rather than its good looks.
It's kind of an ugly only a mother could love is probably the way most of us describe it. It's that ugliness is what makes it so tough.
It's very rugged. People can compare it to like a Jeep or a Hummer or something like that. It's thick, it's big, everything about it is boxy, and it looks very strong and sturdy. It's almost guaranteed to bring the pilot back alive.
But with a top speed of only 420 miles per hour, high-set twin engines, and squared-off slab-like wings, the A-10 was a far cry from any streamlined jet.
It's pretty awe-inspiring. It was so much bigger than the aircraft I'd flown in pilot training. It felt huge and it felt big getting into it. And it was also intimidating just because first time you fly the airplane, you're by yourself, but it was definitely exhilarating at the same time.
The single-seat cockpit is surrounded by a large bubble canopy to provide all-around vision and a bulletproof windscreen.
I love single-seat cockpit. That's one of the reasons that I was enticed by the A-10. No one looking over your shoulder, no one telling you what to do. You put the aircraft where you want to do it and you employ it in the fashion that you want to employ it. It's all personal, and you are the master.
I think the first time that was one of the things that surprised me. It took itself right off the runway for the most part. Once it hits the speed it wants to fly, it just lifts up and away. And I think it probably has to do a lot with the big straight wing, positive camber on the wing. It wants to fly.
The plane reacts to you. It's like you kind of strap on the plane itself, and it's an extension of you, and it flies. It has a feel of a real stick and rudder. The A-10 is known for its tight turn radius, so it can turn on a dime. You can even look at the ground as you're turning, and it looks like you're just turning in space.
straight wing lets us turn very, very tight. So even though we're going slow, we've got a very small turn radius, and we can very quickly move our flight path so that we can dodge all those, the AAA and the surface-to-air missiles.
But it's the challenge of the unique close air support role that's the main attraction to the A-10 pilots. It's an environment where anything can happen at any time.
The mission that we do is not a rote mission. You don't come into it knowing exactly every single thing that's going to happen from the time you take off to the time you land. Once you get in the air is where it starts actually unfolding, and you have to react to that.
You hear American voices on the radio screaming because they're taking fire and that there are people dying. Their artillery can't get the enemy. They call in the A-10s.
Flying of the airplane has to become secondary. Now you're trying to employ the weapon system, and that's where it gets complicated. We get maps spread out in the cockpit, and we're still trying to talk on the radios and keep from getting shot at. You know, we consider ourselves the last gunfighter that's really out there, because when you go into battle and it's a close-in cast fight, the #1 weapon of choice of an A-10 pilot is going to be their gun.
The weapons delivery system incorporates a heads-up display, or HUD, that provides the pilot with the references for flight control and weapons employment.
It's incredibly accurate for a gun system, and probably one of the most flexible weapon systems in the world. It's just point and shoot, just like you'd imagine a revolver in your hand. You point it where you want to shoot it, you pull the trigger, and that's where the bullets are going to go.
When you roll in and you pull the trigger for the first time, you get excited and the adrenaline starts pumping through, and I had the biggest smile on my face.
What a feeling shooting the gun. I mean, the whole airplane shakes. The first time I fired the gun, you know, I had to come off the trigger because it scared me, because I couldn't believe something like that could come out of the front of the airplane, all the flames, the smoke. This 30mm bullet is the size of my forearm. And that smell of gunpowder, you get that in the cockpit after you fire the gun. And it's just incredible. You get a little bit of a high from it, I think, sometimes. It smells like victory.
But it would be some time before the pilots would use their guns in anger. With the ending of the Cold War, the tank fleets of the Warsaw Pact no longer seemed like a threat. And the U.S. Air Force plans to withdraw the A-10 fleet from service by the 1990s. But with a serious situation brewing in the Middle East, all that is about to change. The Warthog was about to play a key role in bringing down one of the most destructive individuals in history. Fuel for the A-10 is held in a self-sealing compartment that's protected by internal and external foam. This holding cell will automatically repair itself if hit by a bullet of up to 23mm in size. Modern Marvels will return in a moment. In September 1980, Iraq invades Iran, beginning one of the longest and most destructive wars of the 20th century. After 8 years, the basic issues dividing the countries remain unresolved. In an effort to contain the Ayatollah Khomeini and the spread of Islamic fundamentalism, the West backed Iraq. Saddam Hussein, the Iraqi dictator, built a formidable war machine, bolstered by the Soviets and the West, becoming the 4th largest army in the world with over 4,000 tanks.